People don't know it. That's the problem. They're so busy in the swamp. They're so busy fighting fires. And as I said, I was doing a readiness assessment, and this guy said to me he was an operational level guy in a reasonably large business. They run SAP. He said, I come to work, I log on to 6 different systems with 6 different 10-digit passwords that IT tells me I'm not allowed to write down. If I get one of them wrong 3 times, I have to, raise a ticket, get my password reset. He said, if I'm lucky, I can do an extract from SAP and other systems, and I can get the information that I need. And if I'm lucky by lunchtime, I have a graph in Excel that shows me on where I'm meant to be. And he does that 5 days a week.
Welcome back to another episode of Unplugged, an IIoT podcast. Today, we've got an incredible conversation lined up for you, full of insights that you're not going to want to miss. But before we dive into that, I want to take a quick moment to thank our main sponsor today, Smithtek. Smithtek specializes in turnkey hardware and software solutions, making remote monitoring and control a breeze. Whether it's agriculture, mining, industrial automation, or even environmental monitoring, Smithtek has you covered. Built right in Perth, Western Australia, their products are reliable, scalable, and adaptable to your needs, whether you're managing pumps, irrigation systems, or generators from afar. Plus, with their web-based SCADA system and support for a wide range of industrial protocols, integrating your systems is seamless. Their user-friendly interface gives you real-time control anytime, anywhere. If you're looking for a smarter way to manage your assets, Smithtek makes it easy and efficient. With that said, let's dive into today's conversation.
And welcome to Unplugged, an IoT podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Seboa.
Hello, Phil, and I'm Ed Fuentes. Well, Phil, a long time coming to have John Broadbent with us. So very special guest. John is Australian. He's an Industry 4.0 educator. He's definitely seasoned. He's got plenty of stories around this whole manufacturing area. He's a strategist. He's definitely one of the key speakers I've seen invited to many industry events. He has decades of experience, and with that comes obviously wisdom and knowledge. And we're very privileged today to have John with us. He's at the forefront of guiding business towards digital transformation. He's passionate about Australian manufacturing, and he's passionate about operational excellence. So, John, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen, Ed and Phil.
So John is the founder of Realize Potential and has delivered over 70 keynotes on smart manufacturing and Industry 4. From mentoring leadership teams to advising cutting-edge AI platforms, John's expertise spans innovation, sustainability, leveraging IoT to do more with less, which we love. So thanks for coming on, John.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So Industry 4 can seem pretty overwhelming to many. Can you break it down for our listeners and what it truly means for manufacturers?
And Industry 4 is already being talked about, which gives me the heebie-jeebies because we haven't even gone with Industry 4 yet. When I started my own education around this quite a few years ago, what prompted me to do some investigation was that it was a term that was being bandied around. A lot of people I spoke to didn't really seem to know what it meant. And I went, well, if I'm going to go out there and want to really educate and teach this stuff, particularly because of my smart factory background, I really need to be across this. So I spent about a year, reading and researching and doing a whole range of stuff around what actually is Industry 4.0. And for those that don't know, we refer in the Western world to the Industrial Revolution, which is really Industry 1.0, and that was around 1784. With the advent of the weaving loom. I'm actually a Yorkshireman by birth, and that was sort of the centre of the wool industry and carpet weaving. My dad was actually a carpet weaver. That was the time of James Watt and the steam engine. And then in 1870, that was really mechanisation. In 1870, Industry 2.0 is supposed to have started, and that was really all around electrification. And that was really a battle, if you remember, between Tesla and Edison. Edison wanted to go DC, Tesla wanted to go AC, and Tesla won. And then in 1969, just as computer chips and that were all being designed, transistors, etc., we started the third industrial revolution, which is about computerization. So we had mechanisation, electrification, and computerization. And then in 2011, Germany coined the term Industry 4.0, probably because they recognised there was a convergence of 3 very specific, I guess you'd call them technology sets. One was what's known as cyber physical systems. So that's the ability for us to see through a computer screen what's going on somewhere else. So your car dashboard, for example, is a cyber physical system. It helps us interact with the cyber world through screens or touchpads or whatever we want to use. Your phone, in a way, is a cyber physical system. It was also then the combination of that plus cloud computing. Today, cloud computing's become so ubiquitous we don't even think about it. Everybody seems to have a Dropbox or a OneDrive or a Google Drive or something, and we just put stuff somewhere, pay our money, and we hope that someone backs it up for us. I've never lost a document that I've ever put in the cloud, touch wood. So we don't even think about it anymore. When you go onto your phone and you use a banking app, you don't know whether that's a computer on or a series of computers on the bank's premises or somewhere in the cloud. And we don't care, to be honest. But that's therefore given us opportunity, as has the industrial Internet of Things. So for listeners who don't know, the Internet of Things, a thing is simply anything from which we can get information. It could be something like a washing machine, an air conditioning system, a car, computers, and the industrial Internet of Things is just a subset of that where we can get information from things we might find in a factory, like robots and computers and control systems and all that sort of stuff. So Industry 4.0 was really like a superset of cyber physical systems, the industrial Internet of Things, and cloud computing. And really it was inevitable that as those three platforms, if you like, or ideas or technology sets converged, we were then in a much better position to collect information, store information, and report that information in a more real-time way. Because what got in the way in the past was we just didn't have the bandwidth, the internet connection, the storage, and trying to do what we do today in 30 years ago in on-premise systems would have been unthinkable.
You mentioned a lot there, technology, John, that I suppose each iterative process of industry revolutions have brought on new technologies. And obviously the Industry 4 bringing in cloud compute, IoT, all these technologies, which, and if we were to dig deep, we'd find so much technology. But we get this feeling that Industry 4 or the transformation from 3 to 4, which we maybe calling digital transformation, is not just so much technology, it's a lot to do with people. I'm very interested in that part because where I see a lot of you and you talk through, John, is that transformational leadership that's required, or leadership. So I know you work close with many leaderships across different industries.
Mm-hmm.
How important, what role does leadership play in this journey to Industry 4 or digital transformation? And what are the two-part question, how important is it? And what are the qualities that is essential to drive this change?
So on a call recently with a company who's kicked my tires for several years, an executive general manager said to me, "You're not convincing me this is a journey we need to take." And I went, "Whoa, hang on a minute. Whoa there, Bessie. I'm not here to convince you of anything. That's the job of your business leadership." And I liken the decision to go down the path of digital transformation a bit like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. If it's on your bucket list, the first thing you do is you say, yes, I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in my lifetime, and then you work out the how. But the decision to do it is yes or no. And it's a bit like that with digital transformation. Organizations at some point will be forced, just like electrification. I mean, imagine sitting in 1870 and getting to 1900 and going, oh, I'm not going to use this newfangled electricity stuff. I'm going to stick with steam. Or in the 1970s and 1980s, as computers were coming out and automation was coming out and saying, no, I'm going to stick with the old ways of, all people, no automation, that sort of idea. And the same thing's happening today with digital transformation. It is happening all around us, whether we like it or not. It's happening in our homes. It's happening on our computers. It's happening on our phones. It's happening to our kids. It's happening everywhere we look. And for organizations to not consider their place and their role and their timeline, and not even to consider having a strategy about what are we going to do over the next 5 to 10 years, for me is pretty sad. And I'll put it into context as to why. I did an opening of a premises as a keynote speaker about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I threw out some statistics for a bit of research that I did. But then a few days later, I thought, just to keep the LinkedIn algorithm fed, I'll throw an article out there on LinkedIn. It was just a graph that I shared at this keynote, and it was the decline of Australian manufacturing from 30% of GDP in 1960 to 14% of GDP in 1990 to 5.4% of GDP in 2023. That's an 82% reduction. What I didn't know is that short article would hit 40,000 impressions, have hundreds of comments, be reposted God knows how many times. And it was like one of those posts, the first post I've ever done that you could say, went viral. And I'm like, what was it about this that took off? And I realized it's because people in consumers actually give a shit. They care about Australian manufacturing, and the sentiment that poured into that one post would absolutely blew me away. So for a manufacturer today who maybe has 10 or 15 years worth of history or less, to consider not even understanding what Industry 4 is or digital transformation is beyond sticking your head in the sand. You're actually putting a nail in your own manufacturing coffin, because this is happening. It's happening now. It's happening all over the world. And you have to make a decision to climb the mountain. You can choose how big the mountain is, and you can choose how you do it, and you can choose when you do it. And it doesn't have to be eating the elephant all at once. You can take 3 to 5 years to start putting things in place. And when you then start looking at the statistics from people like McKinsey's, who monitor the World Economic Forum's global lighthouse network of 130 odd businesses, and you see the dramatic improvement in bottom line productivity, efficiency, waste reduction, all that sort of stuff. Deloitte's put a slide out. It was something like 10% in productivity output, 11% in labour utilisation, and 12% in overall line efficiencies. You add that to anybody's P&L, it's not chump change. So me and others in this sector are at a bit of a loss to understand, well, if you know you can do this and you can pick up 10, 12, 13% across those three areas of your business, why the hell wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, I mean, money talks, right? So you should be listening.
and it's not about proof of concept. Some organisations I meet go, oh, yeah, we'll do this and we'll do that. We'll do a proof of concept. And I go, no. I've been collecting data from the edge, from equipment for 35, 40 years. I wrote my first computer program to collect data from a process in 1977 on a Tandy Radio Shack TRS 80 with a cassette tape backup. Like, we've been doing this for a long time now. We don't need to prove that we can collect data from a device and put it on a dashboard. Come on, let's get over ourselves. What we need to do is change it to proof of value. That if I collect that data and it gives me some insight and I can do something about it, actionable insight, and I can put that on a display and show someone who cares, and they can go and make some adjustments to the process, or they start to see inefficiencies that they didn't know were even there, and we improve that, the return on investment is absolutely spectacular. And so for me, for the life of me, I can't understand why organisations just do this. I don't want to know.
Is it because they've just been doing this for so long that's the return to default position, potentially?
I think it's back to Ed's comment or question. It is the leadership itself doesn't understand this stuff. And grey-haired ceiling. The young engineers that I come across, many times I've done a keynote and a young engineer has come up and said, how do we get past you old blokes? And I've coined the term the grey-haired ceiling, because a lot of manufacturing organisations, because we're not replacing older heads with younger people, we don't have many digital natives inside the realm of manufacturing. We're all digital immigrants. So when AI, machine learning and all this stuff sort of pops up, people freak and go, oh, I don't want to know. It's too much. I don't want to, it's almost Wallace and Gromit, it's too much to hang on to. And so they just want to turn a blind eye to it. But in doing that, they're actually doing themselves and the people in their team, the younger people, the digital natives, a disservice. My advice is provide the framework and the leadership and the mentoring and the coaching that maybe younger people who don't have experience or the depth of experience might need. Set the guardrails in place, point them in the right direction, light the fuse, and get out of the damn way.
Is it a concern of trust, right? Like that the digital natives can't achieve what their expectations are, or is it that they just need to keep doing and plugging away at what the status quo is?
I'll give you an example. I do a readiness assessment where I interview the C-suite or the senior leadership team, but I usually do a workshop first to get the gist from the operational production and engineering management coalface, because that's where I've spent most of my life. So I can talk to these guys and girls, and I can typically tease out what their real issues are. But then I'll do a private, confidential one-on-one interview process with the senior leadership team, record it, take out the salient points, and then compare the two. And often there's a significant amount of misalignment. And what that then leads to is organizations who don't know what they don't know. So the guys at the bottom end have all these ideas and want to go out and produce all these little pilot projects, but they've got no executive level sponsorship or buy-in, so they end up in what's called pilot purgatory, and nothing changes. Whereas if the leadership got themselves educated, actually talked to the guys on the factory floor, and together created a strategy. This is what we're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years. This is our capital spend. This is the expected return on investment. Let's start with some low-hanging fruit. Let's do a little bit of a toe in the water. Let's do an investment. Let's do a proof of value. Let's show that if we do this, we get some, significant return on investment, and then pat ourselves on the head. We've done a great job, and then do the next one. And for me, the summit of the mountain is a fully digitally transformed business where information is available to the right people at the right time in the way they want to consume it, and near real time as we can get. And in order to do that, we need to establish various base camps. So we'll start at base camp 0 and go, well, by the end of next year, this is where we're going to be in our digital transformation journey. We're going to have these processes, automated to some degree. We're going to have some dashboards that are going to give us some information. But when we get to the end of the next year, we've finished base camp 1, we can look back and go, wow, that was a rough patch. We learned heaps. We failed. The data that we collected wasn't as clean as we thought it might be. The frequency of it wasn't enough. But the learnings that will come from that first 12 months foray into this realm will be unbelievably significant. And in fact, when Cisco put a splash page out on their news feed back in May 2017 that said 3/4 of IoT projects are failing, one of the reasons was that the organizations underestimated the cost, the time, the skills required, the quality of the data, but 74% of the respondents to the survey invested more in digital transformation the second time than they did the first time. So it was counterintuitive. You think, oh, they're going to back off here because it cost us money, we didn't learn anything. And they said, no, on the contrary, they learned so much, they're now prepared to invest more money and accelerate their learning as a result.
Yeah.
That's what I find too, John, that you mentioned, that is they put the toe in the water. Even the leadership seem to digitize all their office front end. They go to cloud subscriptions and try to tie up all that and spend lots of money in that space. Not they deliberately ignore factory floor. They probably think that if I fix the top end, the bottom end will. I don't know if that's a philosophy or a thought process, but they sort of, the factory floor is like the last thought in a way. What happens in that space? Maybe because it's in a too hard basket. Maybe it's bigger than Mount Kilimanjaro.
People don't know it. That's the problem. They're so busy in the swamp. They're so busy fighting fires. And as I said, I was doing a readiness assessment, and this guy said to me, he was an operational level guy in a reasonably large business. They run SAP. He said, I come to work, I log on to 6 different systems with 6 different 10-digit passwords that IT tells me I'm not allowed to write down. If I get one of them wrong 3 times, I have to, raise a ticket, get my password reset. He said, if I'm lucky, I can do an extract from SAP and other systems, and I can get the information that I need. And if I'm lucky by lunchtime, I have a graph in Excel that shows me I'm where I'm meant to be. And he does that 5 days a week. My view is, why hasn't he got some integration hub? And I'll talk about this a little bit later about the hub and spoke arrangement, where you have an integration hub that goes out and collects all that information, puts it into a schema that he needs to see in the way that he needs to see it, a business intelligence dashboard. So when he comes to work in the morning, there's 4 green dials and 1 red dial. He goes, that's what I need to look at today. And we have these front end, the office-based Ed, what I call knowledge workers, who've access to dual screens and the best computers and access to SAP and Oracle or whatever else you're using as an ERP system. And these guys and girls as knowledge workers have had access to this technology for 20 years. But the factory floor is still very much bereft of the technology they need to do their job. And yet the part that frustrates me the most is without the factory producing the product that the company sells, no one would have a damn job.
That's right. I mean, that's the profit center, right? That's where you're making your money. That's where you're producing all those widgets that you're selling, right, at the end of the day.
And spend $1 on sales. How much do you get back in your pocket? 10 cents if you're lucky, maybe 13 cents if you've got a good EBIT. But spend $1 on saving $1 in production, you'll get $2 back.
That's right.
And I learned as a very young engineer from a factory manager who said, every dollar you save me in producing is $1 I add to my bottom line. But every dollar I sell, I'll be lucky to get 10 cents. And I went, wow, I hadn't seen it that way.
Yeah.
And yet there's still a lack of awareness of what needs to happen at the factory floor level to get rid of paper. An average, sort of 3 or 4 line FMCG food business will collect around 1 million sheets of paper a year. And not having that digitized, I know one organisation has a recall. They go down to the back of the property. They have an index somewhere that tells them which container, which rack, which column, which row, which cell, which box, and they pull out the archives, and there's all these paper sheets of, metal detector reports and checkweigh calibrations and all the stuff they have to do as challenge tests from the QA department. And then three or four people will sit down in a room for 3 or 4 weeks with all these cardboard boxes of information trying to piece together the story as to why they've had a damn recall. And this goes on every single day.
It is certainly pretty amazing, I guess, just where we've come and where we need to be, and there's everyone's talking about this, everyone has an MES type application at their facilities. However, it could be, a paper-based system, or it could be an Excel, but we kind of...
MES, many Excel spreadsheets. That's it.
That's right. And even, you're mentioning the filing system there, right? And, that is a process of MES, but we're just starting to digitize that process.
Well, there's now a business that I found recently because I was doing some work for a medical devices company, and this truck pulls up and it's called Iron Mountain. And the guy's wheeling out trolleys of archive boxes. And I said to my host, I said, Iron Mountain? He goes, archival storage. So they pay to have these boxes taken away by Iron Mountain. If they're listening, send me a commission. And they take away all these people's paperwork and store it somewhere so they can recover it within 24 to 48 hours if they need it for a recall or some production problem. It's like... Is
some of it sometimes mandatory due to compliance requirements, though, too, John?
Well, it is, but the TGA is now quite accepting that you can store information in a database. As long as the database is backed up, you don't need the paper. And you go through your GMP or GAMP compliance, and you do your tests and get quality. Have the process qualified and validated, and away you go.
Yeah, there was a time where we were, saving the 7 years of data in our tax returns, right? And we're still having to do that type of process as well in our personal lives. So I guess it's not a far-fetched, scenario that big business also has to, create these storage mechanisms of data just to do traceability of their products as well.
But it's a lot easier to recover digital data from an archive and mine that with the appropriate tools in seconds.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
Call Iron Mountain and said, I think it's box number 100 to 150. Can you deliver them in 2 days? Set up an entire conference space, unpack all these boxes, get the paperwork out and try and stitch a story together.
In your experience, John, with the amount of consulting opportunities you've had, talking to customers, to large corporations, can you give us, and you probably talked about that return, well, if it's measurable, a return on investment, can you talk to us through maybe an example? You've worked with the company, how long, from the day you started, a success story, how long it took to get to where they got to, and the financial benefits they achieved. Can you give us some sort of insight to some experience you've had there?
The showpiece is without doubt Coca-Cola's injection molding facility in Western Sydney. 2011 build. We had 6 months to do a 12-month project. They were rolling off Visi as their supplier of bottles, so they decided to build an injection molding facility that would make the preforms, the little tiny test tube, thick wall test tubes with the thread and the flange on them, and then they eventually they get blown into a bottle and filled in one operation, which is actually quite efficient as well. But they used to cart, if you've ever seen a 3-litre Coke bottle, when it's empty, it's a bugger of a thing to manage. They come in, pallets, you have to depalletize them, take the shrink wrapping off and somehow manage them through a conveyor system and then fill them or wash them and fill them. I remember seeing the first production of that machine or off that factory in November 2011, and 13 years old last week, actually. And the bin, which was a collapsible bin, so the bins would come back folded down, they'd lock an Orbis bin, they'd reassemble them and they'd fill them. And 1 cubic metre bin could hold 14,500 Mount Franklin bottles. And they developed these bins to be too wide, too high in a Pantech, specifically dimensioned that way. And they worked out that 1 semi could carry what 8 semis used to carry in bottles. So that first year, I believe, and don't quote me, that there was around about a $2 billion saving in transportation costs moving bottles around the country. So they started moving preforms instead. That factory cost $60 million to build. And the interesting thing was when we did an analysis of what was the actual cost to make it smart, and by smart I mean no paper, automatic orders coming down from SAP on release into the integration hub. The integration hub would take that data and massage it and then ship it out to all the horizontal bits of kit from the automated guided vehicles and injection molding machines. They had a factory-based injection molding MES that came from Husky with the kit. They had Italian resin management handling system. They had German vision inspection system. All this kit out of the box didn't talk to anything. So we just hooked in using, for those that may not know, but those that do, an OPC server. So we just hooked an OPC server into all the PLCs. We'd assign to the vendor, you will create a data block array in your PLC, Siemens, Rockwell, Allen Bradley, Omron, Mitsubishi, we don't care. And you will create a data block. We will mine that data block. And literally from the day we got power on the Monday, the Tuesday we got IT, the Wednesday we connected to all the machines and could prove that we could extract data from them. And within 9 days, we'd started that factory up from 2 weeks from the day we got power to the day we actually started making product. It was unbelievable to watch. And it was 1.2% of the overall capital budget.
So that's an aligned team there, from obviously leadership, planning, delivery, and then the results.
Project management as well. Yeah, the best project I've ever worked on. And then a few years later, we did Australia's first purpose-built ready meal factory, which is now expanded last year into another 10 lines. So here, people say, when you automate, you put people out of work. It's like, well, hang on, they started with 8 lines. They've now moved next door and put in another 10 lines. They've more than doubled their workforce. And that was also a family company, so private business. It was a $60 million build, and that was also around about 1.2% of the capital spend to make it smart. So they have the same thing, an integration hub. ERP in their case is Infor M3. So we had to take orders out of that, take those information, pass it along to the production lines. Stainless steel IP67 touchscreens on the factory floor. Operators only get the orders that are allocated to that line and that work center at that time, so they can only see what they can do. They start an operation, they stop an operation, and information that we've collected then can be put into check weighers, can be put into metal detectors, can be put into barcode scanners, because every product gets scanned before it goes out to make sure it's the right product in the right sleeve, so they don't have recalls. And in 9 years, they've never had a product recall for incorrect packaging. So I'm seeing these benefits roll on year on year from that initial 1.2% expenditure. And that's the part that I find the most frustrating, is people think it's, significant amounts of money. Well, if they hadn't have spent that 1.2%, they'd still be pushing paper today, and they wouldn't have anywhere near the information they need now for their continuous improvement journey, because we put a process historian in that plant on the day that it opened. So we've recorded every set point change, every temperature, air conditioning, dew point, machine temperature, cycle, recipe number. They can go back and mine that 9 years worth of data.
So I guess during that sort of, your experience in the readiness I guess, scenario. And what kind of questions are you asking of, I guess, the leadership team, of the operations guys? Like, how are you identifying these proof of value type operations and projects?
Do you want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? I go, what? It's. I can usually tell organisations that are ready because they're innovative or early adopters, usually privately funded or at least nimble and agile enough not to be one of the big behemoths that's on the stock market that just take forever to do anything. They have typically people in their team that are younger as well as older, but the older people in the team recognise that the younger people in the team know stuff, particularly around their capacity to pick up and run with machine learning and other projects and robotics and vision inspection and stuff like that, real-time stuff. And they have a really good can-do culture. And you're right, Ed, it's not just about the technology, it's about the alignment between people, process and technology. In 2006, I spent a little bit of time wooing Sanitarium Health and Wellbeing to integrate their SAP with the factory floor. They agreed to do it. We basically said, this is what we can do. They went, yep, absolutely, we'll go ahead. And went, fantastic, we're going to get a purchase order. And then they said, come back in 12 months. I'm like, why? And the guy that we worked for, amazing man, I still know him today. He's a sort of the IT business manager, go between IT and manufacturing. Great role. He said, we know our data's dirty. We have human intervention on our master data, and if we start automatically putting that down on the factory floor, all hell will break loose. Give us 12 months. We'll go through a process of change management. We'll train people. We'll clean up our data. We'll do all the process piece to make sure our processes are good. We'll do the people piece to let them know what's going to change in terms of the change management piece, and then you can bring in the system. And as a person 20 years ago, for me, that was a fantastic education, as frustrating as it was initially, because by the time we turned up, they were ready to go. They understood their processes. If you try and digitize a broken process, you're going to get a broken digitized process, and they'll make a lot more mess than a broken human process, because humans tend to know where the process is broken and find their way through it or around it. So it's about a very tight alignment, and the sweet spot of those three circles in a Venn diagram is where you get the best project success.
You mentioned that because I think sometimes what are the obstacles in people adopting or moving to Industry 4 or adopting digital transformation? Because we talked about technology, we have it. The education, I think, is good, I imagine. What are some of where's the block? You're right, when the Venn diagram gets there and we get that sweet spot, perfect, everything's aligned, but you quoted and cited how the manufacturing industry has declined over the years. We don't have that many manufacturers left. The ones we have, let me say something that the other day I was talking to a food company, and I was in a meeting with them, and they said they were actually demonstrating what they've done to their business to another food company. And he told them if a company has not digitized themselves by 2030, it's over. It might even be sooner than that, but he was so adamant that what they've done in their business, and it's taken years. It wasn't 12 weeks. This has taken an iterative process. And I think you mentioned that, John, that idea that we scrapped it, we'll start again, but we know there's value here.
I want to take a quick moment to thank our main sponsor today, Smithtek. Smithtek specializes in turnkey hardware and software solutions, making remote monitoring and control a breeze. Whether it's agriculture, mining, industrial automation, or even environmental monitoring, Smithtek has you covered. Built right in Perth, Western Australia, their products are reliable, scalable, and adaptable to your needs, whether you're managing pumps, irrigation systems, or generators from afar. Plus, with their web-based SCADA system and support for a wide range of industrial protocols, integrating your systems is seamless. Their user-friendly interface gives you real-time control anytime, anywhere. If you're looking for a smarter way to manage your assets, Smithtek makes it easy and efficient.
So what is the resistance? How do they overcome it? What are some clues, strategies?
The biggest, 2 words, ignorance and apathy. When I'm asked often what's the biggest threat to Australian manufacturing, we've already seen the decline, and it's been apathy. I did a survey last year, Ed, where I had an idea that a large percentage of Australian manufacturing was being made on already fully depreciated kit. because everywhere I go, most of what I see, you might see an occasional new machine, but most of it's old stuff. And a friend of mine was at a plant down in Ballarat last year and saw a nameplate on a machine from 1922.
Wow.
So there's still stuff out there.
I mean, that's good return on investment. I'm just saying.
And they show it off with pride. Oh, look at this machine. It's 100 years old. And
talk about sweat the asset.
To the point it's just melting. And the survey was, what percentage of Australian manufacturing do you think is made on fully depreciated kit? And I gave them some bands. 80% of people thought it was more than 75%. And that's consistent with my experience. Mine was, small sample size, just me. But I also watched the whole exodus of manufacturing to a lower cost labour base. And I know one company in particular who had a roll forming machine. And when I went and had a look at what they were doing, they wanted to measure some OEE, had a look at the machine, like it was out of the arc. It was probably 1950s, 1960s. And instead of going, well, we've had 40 years life out of it, we've had all the depreciation from the tax department that we're supposed to use to replace the machine. Instead, they just said, no, we're going to export it to Malaysia. So they did. Lower cost manufacturing base. Then COVID hit. Now can't get product. Have to carry insurance stock at both ends, have quality issues that I can't monitor because it's now a third world country or a second world emerging economy. And really they're now faced, they can't bring that machine back because it's so old and out of date and you can't get the skills to run it anyway. So they're now faced with, well, let's buy some land, let's build a building, let's buy all new equipment, and let's basically start again. And we have to find the skilled labour force in order to make it work. So what a lot of manufacturers haven't realised is that transfer to a lower cost labour base was a one-way street. And when an organisation can reshore, it's usually because they have, and some are starting to reshore, it's usually because they do have capacity here already and enough capital behind them to be able to add additional stuff. But no one's really starting up from scratch and bringing stuff back in because the penalty to do that is huge. So I'm trying to do the best I can to stop that further slide. When I saw that number from last year of 5.4% of GDP, it was very depressing, and it landed really well, unfortunately, at this opening of this. It was a centre of excellence for additive manufacturing that was being opened in southwestern Sydney. And it was a guy who runs a really great business who's seen a lot of this industry the same as me. We got a coffee about 6 months ago and realised twin sons, different mothers, come from very similar backgrounds and have very similar perspectives. And so he decided to do something about it. And he's opened up a centre for excellence in 3D manufacturing.
Fantastic. Is there enough fluency in what's required in industry? You've come at this with years of knowledge in the businesses that you're right, they should be focusing on what they need to do. Is there enough understanding? Do we need to up the game education-wise?
People are way too risk averse, and a lot of cultures are being created. And I think it may be a Western thing, but it may be more an Australian thing that a lot of cultures are risk averse and failure averse. If you make a mistake and you don't get it quite right, then it's almost like you'll be vilified. Other people's egos will tear you down, see you're a dickhead, that sort of attitude. And it really stifles the opportunity for innovation in these organisations. I mean, I'm going to hold Tesla up there, SpaceX up there, because they'll launch a rocket, it'll blow into a million pieces, and Musk goes, "Oh well, we learned a lot from that."
That's right.
Continuous improvement.
Next one,
and the fifth one, up she goes, and it works.
It's interesting because as you say these words around. When I go to a lot of factories, the management or the operations manager, not the operations, maybe the maintenance manager, they're all my vintage. They've been there many years, and this is how we've done. I don't think it's like this is how we've done it. We're not going to. I don't think they're adverse to change, but there's something either they're not getting the support from the management team, either.
No leadership, Ed. Fundamentally, it's no leadership. There's no one at the front going, we're going to climb that damn mountain. We may not know how, but we're committed to climb the mountain. Who's with me? Let's work out the roles. Oh, we don't have expertise in this particular area, or we don't have a strategy. Well, I know this bloke called John. Let's get him in. Let's spend some time with him. let's have the benefit of his life's experience and 50 years next year of doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And let's work out how do we get a strategy, and let's talk to a mountaineer who's climbed 10 of these mountains before and pick their bloody brain and work out how can we do this with the least amount of cost and the best amount of return. It's not that hard.
Is there a role of, I guess, government agencies or government bodies to drive these initiatives through legislation, or what's the role of government in this space, do you think?
Have you heard of the play Waiting for Godot? The guy stands there forever and Godot never shows up. How long are you going to wait, Phil?
Yeah.
Not since John Button all those years ago have we had anybody in Parliament, really. Kim Carr was sort of tried but didn't really get far. Barry Jones.
Yeah.
He was a really smart guy, science, all that sort of stuff. I've had some interesting dealings with the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation. I've spoken to them 3 times. They keep coming back for more. But since May, they've ghosted me because they don't want to hear what I have to say. And that is that there's $15 billion worth of taxpayers' money available for loans, but the average business doesn't even know they're there, doesn't know how to get access to it. And when I challenged the NRFC, because Ed Husick, the minister, said there's going to be mentoring and coaching provided by the NRFC to make sure that the investment is well spent and has a return on investment. It's not a grant, it's a loan. When I spoke to them about that, they said, we haven't thought of that. So there's no mechanism in place that we're going to give money to an organisation. This is the project they're putting forward, but we're not going to support them in coaching and mentoring and bringing some mature, best-of-breed people in to help them succeed. It wasn't even on their radar.
I think that's probably the challenge, is that most government, officials don't have the OT creds to be able to talk to it, right? Having that challenge, so the best, outcomes they can come up with is around sustainability and those types of initiatives where they because they get most public backing behind those types of initiatives. So they're, talking about LED replacements, and they're talking about these kind of, they can save you money, but they're not kind of producing what you really want, which is more profit for the organizations to grow.
Mention ESG, net zero, DEI, whatever the latest, buzzwords are that are out there, and you'll get funding. But go back to our traditional base, discrete manufacturing, whatever, and sorry, you're old school.
I guess this is a government challenge to try and get businesses more, I guess, talking to, the things that matter for them is like brand recognition, right? So brands are talking about, being more sustainable. This is a popular term within the industry, right? So, how can you show that your brand is more, I guess, responsible, more, empathetic to the environmental costs of the manufacturing space, those types of things. So maybe it's aligning with that kind of ethos to try and get manufacturers more interested, and leadership teams thinking about the glamorous portion of their businesses as well. How can we sell this to our customers?
The UK last year, the end of last year, the UK announced that they had met their effectively greenhouse gas green energy targets. And everybody goes, woo woo, isn't that amazing? Until you look at the detail. They didn't achieve it by being more efficient. Energy was so expensive in the UK that we know, similar here during our winter, but in the UK it was eat or heat. And most people chose to eat. So energy was so expensive that a number of major manufacturers in the UK transferred the last part of the value add process that was energy intensive, put it on a boat, powered by diesel, sent to Eastern Europe somewhere, converted and finally finished in its operation, sent back to the UK, and then retailed. So when you look at the overall carbon footprint of that, it was significantly worse than had the stuff just been made in the UK in the first place. But because of a lack of energy policy in the UK, hello, I've been waxing lyrical for the last 3 or 4 years here about an energy policy in Australia. We don't have one. There was another fracking, Northern Territory fracking project approved recently. We've basically given away the farm again. We did it with the Gorgon gas project. The royalties from that to Australia have been infinitesimal. We don't have a sovereign wealth fund like Norway that's sitting at 1.8 trillion at the moment, because they, rental resource tax for all the stuff they took out of the North Sea. And we've just done it again in the Northern Territory with an organisation where the minister from the Northern Territory government has now taken on, after the thing was awarded, has taken on the role as a media advisor for the company that she was regulating over. Bloody revolving door.
Our manufacturers have challenges all over the place. Energy challenges, political challenges, I suppose learning challenges, internal challenges.
Labour, STEM labour.
STEM labour, yeah.
Very few young people going into engineering.
Engineering, manufacturing, even the amount of trades are dying. They're busy in infrastructure projects. So there's this labour issue, there is political issues, there is directional issues. No wonder leaderships are struggling to where to invest the few dollars they have. So if they have a few dollars, John, the manufacturer does have a few dollars, and we have some manufacturers, say, listening, what are some questions they should be asking? Are there some low-hanging fruit that potentially could take advantage of?
Just look at your P&L. Seriously. A classic example, a company I know, $100 million P&L, 60 million cost of goods, had already cut the guts out of the labour force as much as they could. And food and beverage, it was, there was packing back boxes and the typical sort of high-speed stuff that process workers, have done and probably will continue to do until robots replace them as well. But we had a look at their cost of goods, and they were like, we need to save 3 more people on, blah, blah, blah. And you work it out, it's worth like, I don't know, $300,000 or $400,000 a year. Mm-hmm. But the cost to do it, robotics and everything else, it was just not quite amenable to do that. So we then had a look at, say, well, okay, cost of goods, 60 million, 15% waste. Well, there's $9 million. Pick up a third of that, there's 3 mil. It's 6 times more than saving 3 people. Why aren't you doing work on focusing on that? Oh, but that's because the standard to which the product is made, at which the standard cost model is based, is soft. And because it's soft, the variance report comes out and goes, good variance. Because you're reaching your soft standard. Well, how about you take your waste from 15% to 10%? From $9 million to $6 million a year, and see what that looks like, and see what you have to do that. And you'll find that's not about removing people. It's probably not even about adding in your systems. It is using what you've already got to understand where the waste is, why the waste is there, doing your 5 whys and your lean principles and all that sort of stuff to then minimise your waste stream and take $3 million out of your waste costs and landfill, and that's for me a more sustainable model.
Even identifying byproducts within the value stream, right, and creating more revenue streams for that, because those byproducts can be, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So I've seen plenty of businesses out there just looking, for other ways to really utilize that waste and not have to put it into landfill.
And the circular economy. The circular economy is coming, whether we like it or not, and we have to get smarter as manufacturers, as you say, to look for co-products, byproducts. Can my waste stream become someone else's input? I was at a factory in Melbourne 2 weeks ago, a very large producer of timber products, and they have to pay someone to come and take away their sawdust. And I can go to Bunnings in winter, and I know they've got sawdust logs that I have to buy.
It's just a phone call away, right?
Hey, do you want some free sawdust?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have to pay for someone to take it away. You can come and take it away for free.
Yeah,
and you can buy a machine and make sawdust logs. It's not that hard.
No, absolutely. I think just talking about, openly about what your challenges are is going to help you. So I guess getting manufacturers together in industry events and, consortiums and leadership groups and those types of events are really valuable for those manufacturers as well.
Well, I ran a workshop in Queensland, Moreton Bay. And I asked the people in the room who came to do the workshop, what keeps you up at night? Not enough data, too much data, can't see the data, don't know where I'm at, can't see visibility on the factory floor, got no idea when stuff's being produced, where it is along the supply chain internally, like all the same stuff. And in fact, you guys know I put a video series together on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and we called episode 13 Same Shit, Different Address, because my business partner and I used to get to the front gate of ex-business partner and I get to the front gate and just look at each other and go, oh, same shit, different address. Because the
Same
problems
struggles.
were the same.
Yeah.
Everywhere. The context is always unique, don't get me wrong, and people have their own, problems around that, but the issues are the same. I can't see what I'm making, how I'm going, am I making the plan? Do I have the information I need to do, my continuous improvement? Am I even looking at the data to do continuous improvement? Am I applying 5S, lean principles, 5 Ys, all that sort of stuff, Kaizen? I don't care what your methodology is, just to look at how I can. Most organisations probably don't even have a value stream map that shows them where the value is actually being added to their process or not, and how long it should take for a part or thing to move from, the front gate to the back gate.
Yeah, just understanding how quickly you can get that process through your system is, because usually it's a bit of a thumb suck, right? To say, okay, it takes us about 5 minutes, right? Or so forth. But when you actually go look in reality, it could take double that as well.
And I don't think it's been any easier from a technology point to do that than it is today. There's so many solutions. There's so much wealth of low cost, no cost. With Phil and I, we've had a number of podcasts around low code, no code, open source, proprietary. You pick any method known to, you can almost grab information technology. So it's not the technology. We agree. There's processes in place that you've got to fulfill, but it's people and leadership. So I think that's, and to a degree, a lot of education. So talking about education and learning here, John, you're a big learner. Obviously, you need to be in the forefront and keep learning in your role. What are some of the things? 2 questions here. One, what are you learning, and what would you encourage leaderships to learn?
So I'm looking further afield at where markets are shifting. I'm looking at what others are doing. I'm looking at the emergence of Industry 5.0. What does that even mean? I'm keeping, as best I can, my finger on the pulse about what other countries are doing. I think it was Siemens in Germany who last year remarked that only 4% of German industry is on the Industry 4 journey.
Wow. And they coined it.
We're about 1%, I'd say, if we're lucky. It's a double-edged sword because you go only 1%, we're behind the rest of the world. Yes, we are. The Global Lighthouse Network, as I mentioned before, has 132 businesses. They're recruiting every few months, new businesses enroll, and they are monitored by McKinsey's about their digital transformation journey from the point of view of return on investment. And there is no Global Lighthouse business in Southeast Asia from the point of view of Australia and New Zealand, in Oceania, I should say. And I've asked 2 businesses, do you want to become a Global Lighthouse Network thing? And it means that you start your journey, you get monitored along the way, and you get awarded at the end that you're now part of the Global Lighthouse Network as a best-in-class manufacturer. And the kudos from that would be off the bloody charts. And the answer on both occasions has been, no, we're too busy.
Oh.
So what do you do?
I guess to Ed's point, I guess what should they be doing in the next, 2 years, 1 year to increase their, digital literacy, their, understanding of Industry 4? What steps should they be taking?
So to go back to the mountain metaphor, if your answer is yes, well, then you work out the how. What flights do I need? What kit do I need? What boots do I buy? What pack do I get? What water bottle size do I get? Like, you get into the detail of the how. And if you're smart, you don't just make it up. You go and talk to someone who's done it before, or you get a guide or a mountaineer who's done it.
A Sherpa, maybe?
Yeah, but someone who's done it before, and they tell you what you need to do.
Yeah.
This is no different. It's yes, we're going to do it. We're going to climb the mountain. We don't know what the mountain looks like in terms of terrain, but we can find out. But there's so much available today to do that, whether we read, whether we listen to podcasts like this one, whether we reach out to people that we know in the industry that are well regarded and well referenced and have experience, whether we go and talk to providers of solutions. But a word of caution before we finish. I agonised for months over one of the episodes. I think it was episode 6. It's called "It Ain't About the Platform," because I was hearing software providers complain bitterly around no one was picking up their systems. And I went, yeah, why is that? And I realised it's not the first decision that an organisation makes, or it shouldn't be the first decision. It should be the last decision. The first decision is, do we want to be best in class? Second decision is, if we do we know what that even looks like? And there are companies who say they do, but they've never left their own four walls, so how can they? Do we have a leadership, again, committed to the digital transformation journey that's going to support us and give us executive level sponsorship? Do we even know what problems we're trying to solve? Let's look at our P&L. Is it power, water, gas, raw materials, labour, waste? What are we trying to do here? And it's not that there's not that many. You either reduce your inputs, and if your two outputs, waste and finished goods, you want to reduce waste and improve finished goods. It's not hard. And do we then know what we want to do? Do we have budget? Do we have resources, both in knowledge and capability? And then, and only then, it's like, okay, we now have a project. We now have leadership. We know what we're going to do. We now have a strategy. We've got a plan. Here's our first project. Let's all get together with a cross-functional team. Definitely need some IT support in there. And let's see how we can get our first project across the line as a digital transformation project. Doesn't matter how small or big, the smaller the better. The more nimble, the better. And you don't want to wait 12 months for IT to approve it. You've got to work out how you can work together and get this thing done. And then you just go ahead and do it.
Absolutely.
Good advice.
And then you'll be in a position to choose a platform or a vendor or a software package. There's how many to choose from these days.
Yeah, it's like there's never been a better time from a technology point of view. I don't think it's only going to get better, but without a purpose, without a mountain you're going to climb, without those right questions that you've asked, the support from the leadership, a strategy, a destination, and I think, John, it's fair to say that you're not going to get it perfect that day one. No. It's all part of that learning journey for your business. Yep. Even if it's the same shit, but it's still your shit you need to deal with.
It is.
Yeah.
And if we can get people to do the job they're employed to do, particularly in the continuous improvement and operational space, rather than them spending half their life mining systems that are archaic to get the data that they need, that they often don't even trust anyway, just give them the data that they need in the way they want to see it in real time, and they can make decisions based on that. The analogy I used is, you're sitting in a car, your windows are blacked out, the view in the rear view mirror is where you were a month ago, you've got no dashboard, and you've got the managing director sitting in the passenger seat asking, are we there yet? And that's the sad reality of the way most manufacturing businesses are being run. It's all rear view stuff. It's all lag measures, week-old, month-old reports.
Yesterday's results, yesterday's production. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, John, it has been a roller coaster of information. I'm hoping we're on the up now that we've got all those valuable insights into, where these manufacturers need to go up to the top point of this mountain that we've got to climb together. I think we've kind of identified that we need the right community and right partnership around to achieve those goals as well. And thank you for sharing those invaluable lessons from, manufacturers as well, navigating these complexities of Industry 4.
Yes, very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, John. There's definitely the analogies, your wisdom, your years of experience does come through in how you talk. And I feel I would encourage anyone actually listening to the podcast, the manufacturer, that if they're looking for that mountain guide or that Sherpa, that please, reach out to John. I know that he does share a lot of content on in LinkedIn. He's got video series. There's definitely knowledge to be had there. So I would encourage anybody to reach out to John. So thank you, John, for sharing your time with us, sharing your knowledge with us, and helping us navigate that complexities of Industry 4 around process, people, and technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Very grateful for the opportunity. I've known you guys for a while, Phil especially. More recent you, Ed, but I sense you very much share the same passion as me, and I will do whatever I can to make sure this bloody industry doesn't flatline.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to Unplugged, an IoT podcast, for more conversations with industry leaders like John. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.